not a Taurus. These suck. Don't worry, it's not you, it's the gun.
Alright.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm surprised that thing stayed together for you, you know, because it's a Taurus and all.
What's up, everybody? Ghillisniper300 here with the Outdoor Sports Club, and today I'm going to talk about 9mm versus 45 again. Fairly popular subject, and as a lot of people have pointed out, it's a fairly useless subject in a lot of ways. A while back, Doc 6mm did 3 videos for us on the subject, and I think he did a pretty good job of being unbiased and just, you know, shooting some stuff and kind of giving what we collectively, not all of us agree on everything, but on this subject, but sort of collectively what we felt about 9mm versus 45, and then just trying to show what each one can do in different configurations. Really quickly, just in the sake of transparency, for the sake of transparency, I think most of us in our little group prefer the 9mm over the 45 for a number of reasons. But most of us, I believe, have, well, I can't say most of us have a 45, but several of us have a 45. It's, you know, whether we prefer one or the other doesn't mean we dislike any of them. There's some 40 Smith & Wessons in the group, etc., etc. And for further transparency, I will say that before I shot pistols, I preferred a 45. Once I started shooting pistols, I preferred a 9mm. I don't know exactly what that means, it's just a little anecdotal so everybody knows. My first pistol was a 45, however, even though I preferred 9mm at the time. I just really wanted an H&K USP. One thing you can see in those videos is shot placement is key. And that, I think, is what the most wisdom that has come out of those discussions, is that shot placement is key. And I think that most people realize that. The difference between these two bullets is significant in some cases and insignificant in others. And there are a lot of trade-offs between these two bullets. And this is my point, that there are always trade-offs, no matter what you're shooting. Even I could pull a 380 into this discussion, and a 40 Smith & Wesson, and a 10mm, and a 357 SIG, and we could have trade-offs all the way from the top to the bottom in both directions, good and bad. That's the case. So when we're comparing these two particular cartridges, one particular trade-off is you get more energy with this, typically speaking. You also get more recoil. You also get larger size, more cost, etc. You lose some velocity. With this, you gain the velocity, but you lose the mass. You gain some other things like controllability, recoil, reduced recoil, more capacity, lower cost, things like that. So that's my point. Another point I want to make is it's personal preference. A lot of people wanted us to talk about the 40 Smith & Wesson, which I will grant that that's one that probably needs to enter the discussion. The 10mm and the 357. The 40 Smith & Wesson I'd like to throw into this discussion at some point, but I haven't fired a 40 Smith & Wesson enough. I've looked at the data, and to me it is kind of an in-between round of these two, as it's supposed to be. And therefore, we don't have to discuss it, if that makes any sense. The 10 millimeter and the 357 I'm not going to discuss because I've never shot either. I don't really plan on shooting either unless somebody just hands me one and lets me shoot it at some point. Nobody I know owns either of those two pistols, and I have never seen ammo for either of those at any of the common stores I go to. I know I can get the ammo. I would probably have to order it online or go find a kind of a hole-in-the-wall shop that just always has tons of ammo. I can buy these at Walmart. I can buy them online. I can pretty much find them in any store I want to go to. I can find Sporty Smith & Wesson in just about any store I want to go to. I can't find that in 10 millimeter and 357. They also recoil more. They have loud reports, large fireballs coming out the end, etc., etc. There are a lot of downsides to those cartridges that are trade-offs. Excuse me. As I was saying, I've had a cold and my throat's really dry too. Those are trade-offs to gain the extra energy in those cartridges. Okay, now I've got some data here. I'm sort of an analytical person, so we can shoot all day long, and just so you know, I'm not shooting in this video until the end, and it's totally ridiculous, goofy shooting that doesn't mean anything. I'm sort of an analytical person, so I've got some data, and I wanted to take these two cartridges and just come up with a way to sort of analyze them against each other. So what I've done here, I understand that this is a little bit confusing, but we have the 45 ACP and the 9 millimeter, and we've got this split out, and basically some of the traits it's better for the number to be higher, and some it's better to be lower. If it's better to be higher, I've highlighted it in green. If it's better to be lower, I've highlighted it in red. Then I've taken some percentages of the ideal. Now this is not the ideal, it's just the ideal when comparing these two cartridges. Which one is better for that trait? And then at the bottom I've summed the good traits, I've summed the bad traits, I've subtracted the bad traits from the good traits, and the higher number, in theory, on paper, would be the one that has the best utility for what you're giving up, for what you're getting, etc., etc. So, here we have bullet diameter. 45 is 452 thousandths. 9 millimeter is 355 thousandths. Obviously, the 45 is better in that regard. It's 27% better. Bullet weight of load number 1, 230 grains versus 115. It's 100% better than the 9 millimeter. So for muzzle velocity, you've got 900 feet per second versus 1300. So it's 31% worse than the 9 millimeter. But you gained 100% weight. Muzzle energy is pretty close, 414 versus 420, so the 45's 1% lower than the 9 millimeter. That's a fairly standard load for either, I believe. I tried to find average loads. Load 2 is a little bit hopped up for both of them. Okay, bullet weight 185 for 45, 115 for 9 millimeter. The 45 is 61% better than the 9 millimeter. Muzzle velocity 1225 feet per second versus 1430, so it's 14% worse for the 45. That's a lot closer. Therefore, you get a muzzle energy of 616 for the 45 versus 519 for the 9 millimeter. The 45 is 19% better in that regard. Okay, one thing I want to point out on those loads is that there are a lot of variables going into that, and we're talking about pistol bullet energies. We're not talking about rifle bullet energies here, so they're both low. That 19% makes a big difference, but that same nominal difference doesn't make is not a very big deal if we're talking about rifles and things like that. I don't think. That's my personal taste. Test barrel length, I'm saying you want them shorter rather than longer, because typically you want a shorter barrel if you're carrying and things like that. Now I know that longer barrels can sometimes be a good thing, but in the case of pistols, typically I want the highest speed out of the shortest barrel. That's just my taste. Now there are some things like sight radius that you lose the advantage if you shorten the barrel. Test barrel length on the 45s was 5 inches. That's 8% worse than the 4.65 of the 9 millimeter test barrels. Maximum cartridge diameter 480 thousandths for the 45, 392 thousandths for the 9 millimeter. The 45 is 22% worse. You lose some capacity because you've got a wider, and you lose some size in your pistol, some size advantage for comfort. Now some people like big pistols. So this may not apply for them. Average weight of the cartridge in ounces. Now, these numbers are slightly low because my scale doesn't have very good resolution, but I got 0.7 versus 0.4. I believe it's more like 0.71 versus 0.441 or something like that. But it also depends on the cartridge you're shooting. So this is slightly biased in favor of the 9mm, I'll admit that. But the weight of the 45 in this case is 75% worse than the 9mm. Now, average price for 50 rounds. I had to fudge the numbers on these because I couldn't find any receipts, but of these two bullets, both federal, 230 grain of a ball versus 115 grain full metal jacket. I believe I paid just under 20 for the 45s. I rounded it way down to 18 because I think it was actually somewhere around 19 bucks. Rounded it down to 18. The 9mm was just under 12, so I rounded up to 12. And I feel like, you know, I bias towards 9mm on the weight a little bit. I'll bias towards 45 on the price. And you can find them for cheaper sometimes. So anyway, the 45 is 67% worse than the 9mm. If you sum all that up and subtract them out, as you can see, you get 98.5 for the 45 and 175 for the 9mm. Excuse me. To me, that says that the 9mm has more utility than the 45. However, if you take out just the weights, this can change a lot. If you take out just the weight variable that I threw in here, you're looking at 273.5 for the 45 and 275 for the 9. So very, very close. Depending on the way you weight this evaluation, you could get a lot different results. That's important because different people are going to feel differently about these different variables. Some people may think that muzzle energy is a lot more important than velocity. I mean, and to be quite honest, we are throwing several variables in there that are getting multiple points of representation because I'm putting muzzle velocity and weight and muzzle energy in there all together. So I understand that this is a very quick and flawed way of looking at it, but it's just something I wanted to put together more than anything to show people that it is in fact a trade-off. And you're going to have to look at this data, or do the research on your own, find your own data. This is stuff I pulled off the internet, stuff that I have on file from tests that we've done and things like that. But do your own research, look at the data, weight it however you want. You might find a way to multiply out, multipliers, factors. If you really want to get that analytical about it, or you can just take a look at it and say, well, I care more about this. I don't care about cost at all. Cost, I'm rich. I don't care what the ammo costs. I'm going to shoot as much as I want to shoot no matter what. So I'm going to mark that one off. Maybe you don't care about capacity. Some people don't. So you can mark, you guys get the point. Okay. So that's just my own funny, goofy way, nerdy way of looking at it. I nerd out on this kind of stuff quite a lot. We've also gotten criticisms in the past about why we shoot jugs. Why do you guys shoot this stuff? I'm not going to get attacked by watermelons and textbooks and jugs. Well, my funny answer, or what I thought was funny, was always we can never get anybody to go stand in front of the gun and take a bullet and tell us which one was better. So I decided to take a bullet for you guys. Okay? So I'm going to take a 9mm and I'm going to take a 45 and I'll tell you which one is worse. And just a little hint, if you guys can't tell that this is really, really fake, and you will be able to tell, but if you can't tell that this is really, really fake, do not do this at home. It's ridiculous and it's not real. So enjoy. Peace out. Alright, so let's see which one of these does better. Go ahead. Step on out there. Alright, first up, 9mm. Come on, get up. Get up. We got a video to shoot, buddy. Alright. Next up, 45.
Hey man, I'm getting faint.
Safety. Okay, so One of those was worse.
I didn't really feel that much of a
As you
difference.
can see, there's not a whole lot of difference between 9 and 45. You all right there, buddy?
Okay, so just a second, Ghillie Sniper walks up and takes a shot.
150 yards.
How many?
150.
One shot hit with a Glock. Oh.
Whoa.
There's one. Not bad.
I gotta try it now.
How'd you do that like with one shot the first time? That's crazy.
Because I didn't care.
Oh. I guess Doc's trying now.
Oh,